Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, March 22nd. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 164 days, the game against Michigan in 248 days. Today is an off day for the Ohio State football team, but it is going to be a busy one inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, and we will be there to cover all of it. It is pro day for Ohio State. The Buckeyes had practice on Tuesday, now pro day Wednesday. They'll be back to practice on Thursday and then have a scrimmage on Saturday. So that's kind of the lay of the land on what's going on this week. Today, we're going to be hearing directly from Ohio State head coach Ryan Day. We got a chance to talk to him on Tuesday, and he had a lot of interesting stuff to cover. I'm going to guess this show is going to be a little longer than average for you, because there was a lot of stuff we got a chance to talk to Ryan Day about. Let's start about just sort of spring ball on the whole, and I'm going to warn you, the spoiler alert here is the theme of the day was kind of too soon to tell on a lot of different stuff, because of course that was the third practice of the spring for Ohio State, and the first one where they were actually wearing pads. And when we got to talk to Ryan Day, he hadn't had a chance to go back and watch any of the film of that practice. So there's going to be a lot of, it's a little early, it's too soon to tell, but there's still also some interesting stuff in here. Let's start with the competition at center. Offensive line, one of the big areas of conversation and concern, perhaps, for Ohio State this year. We're going to hear him discuss several players. He's going to use a lot of first names in several answers in the show, so I'll try and give you a heads up on who those guys are in case you're not familiar with backup offensive linemen. You're going to hear him discuss Carson Hinsman and Vic Cutler at center. And then you're going to hear a quick follow-up question on the right tackle position.
First day in pads today. I'll get on the film and take a look at it. I think, so far I've been impressed with the way Carson's come out and competed early on. Vic is learning the offense. I think he would tell you that, practicing every day at Ohio State is something that he's adjusting to, but has ability, has athleticism, got a great attitude. So I think we'll see the best football out of him as we get closer to the middle of spring practice. But so far I've been pretty pleased with what's going on at center.
And right tackle?
Yeah, right tackle. It's still too hard to tell, I think, there. Again, this is our first day in pad, so it's going to be hard to really give you a lot of evaluation. We'll get going with a bunch of inside drill on Thursday and probably get after it in a little bit of a scrimmage setting on Saturday at times. So I think coming off the week, we'll have a better feel for it. But so far, there's been some good things. There's been some things that we want to get better at, certainly. But we'll take a look at the film today with the pads on, because when we don't have pads on, it's very difficult. I think guys have to take care of each other, learn how to practice without pads the first 2 days, but had them on today, and there was a lot of good things out there.
Another area where Ohio State knows it needs to improve is in the secondary. He was asked about guys in the secondary who were maybe standing out in some of the early practices, with the caveat that, yes, it is very early. You're going to hear him name 4 cornerbacks here, so you can read that as things are looking great at corner. You can read that as, well, he was asked about the secondary, he didn't mention the safeties. Again, it's early, but here's Ryan Day's answer on guys who are standing out in the secondary.
It's hard right now to say who was really standing out, but I think Denzel and Jordan and Davidson's been in there. Jair, they've got their hands on balls. I think just as a group right now, they're competing, they're challenging, and I don't think we could ask for a better start of spring practice coming off the first 3 days. So we'll see as we get towards the middle. Like I said, I can probably give you a better evaluation as we get closer to the middle of spring practice and then towards the end of where guys are at. But I just like their attitude. I like their competitiveness. It's a bunch of guys working on the perimeter every day, and that's what we want. We want to be really competitive this spring in everything we do. And as we get going here with the pads, we'll be in more winner-loser situations, and that's what we want.
I just had a conversation with Tony Gerderman on the show a couple days ago about how the transfer defensive backs had looked early on in the year. Safety Jahad Carter, who had come in from Syracuse, cornerback Davison Igbinosun, who came in from Ole Miss. Day was asked, not necessarily on the field, but just in terms of the team and doing what you need to do to really become a true member of the team, how those transfer defensive backs were fitting in.
Yeah, I think they are fitting in well. When you come to Ohio State, you don't just jump into that locker room and, think that you're going to get the respect of the teammates just because you're walking into the locker room. You have to earn it. I think both of them have done that through, winter workouts, mat drills, and now into the third day of practice. They've worked. I think that anytime you're in that type of situation, you have to kind of work your way into it. You kind of, you're seen before you're heard, and they're doing that right now. Again, where does it go into practice 7, 8, 9, 10? We'll see. But so far, I've been pleased with not only their attitudes, but their ability to help us this upcoming season.
One of the other big stories of this spring is the evolution and growth of Brian Hartline as a play caller. The plan is, assuming everything goes according to how it should, that Brian Hartline will be calling plays this fall for Ohio State. And it sounds like he actually may get to do some of that this weekend in the scrimmage. So when that happens, and again, stipulation, once again, it's early, not everything is in. How do you go about evaluating his work as a play caller?
Yeah, you don't really know until you get into a game how that works, but we're going to try this these next couple weeks to try to get some game type situations and get that going. But a big part of it right now in the first 10 practices is installing his fundamentals, and then we try to start playing the game more. But when you don't have red zone in, third down, short yardage, those type of situations in, it's hard to get into those type of game situations. So we'll typically script a lot of what we do, and we're only into day 3 here, and today was our first day in pads coming off of spring break. So we've been pretty basic. We're really working on fundamentals, hand placement, pad level, those type of things, ball security. And then as we get into more situational stuff, then we have our full game plan and we can get into that stuff. So, then the best you can do is just kind of get out there and call it and just see what happens and try to change the situation the best you can. But you don't quite really get a feel for it till you're in a game.
The first scrimmage of the spring happens this Saturday, and again, we will be there. We'll have lots of chances to fill you in on all the different stuff that we get to see. But what are we actually going to get to see? What is that scrimmage going to look like on Saturday? And Ryan Day's answer makes it sound like, well, it's complicated.
No, we're going to talk about it as a staff in terms of exactly how we're going to do it. We'll see how we come out of Thursday. That's a big part of it too, is the injuries and how many guys we have at what position. So we'll try to figure out how many reps we want to get each guy. But, we want to tackle to the ground and, with certain guys. One thing about spring practice, the more you think about it, and with COVID and everything that's gone on the last couple of years, you have guys who've been in the program for 4 years, for 5 years, and you have guys who should be finishing up their senior year of high school. So you have different variety of experiences and age groups. So trying to figure out what's right for each guy is where, this time of year you got to do a great job of. Some guys have played a bunch of football. They've had thousands of snaps in games. Other guys have never done it before. So what we want to do is get a lot of those younger guys a bunch of game reps, see who can tackle, see who's going to make plays, give them an opportunity to go put it on the field. So we'll be very basic in what we're doing schematically, but just allow them to go play and then grade the film and see where we're at.
One of the other very, very, very big stories this spring is the battle for the starting quarterback job. Now, Ryan Day is in charge of evaluating those quarterbacks along with Corey Dennis, Brian Hartline, and the rest of the coaching staff. So how much of a challenge is it to evaluate quarterbacks when they're out there in those black jerseys? It means no contact, which means the defense knows they can't hit him, but the quarterback knows he's not going to get hit no matter what. So the pass rush doesn't really matter in the way that it will this fall when everything's sort of bullets are flying for real. So how do you adjust for that? How do you figure that out, evaluating those quarterbacks when it's not really a game situation?
The best I can tell you, it's a great question, is just based on experience. Trying to, compare and contrast based on quarterbacks we've had in the past, what it's looked like, the decision-making process, trying to put them in as many game-like situations as possible. Third down, red zone. But to be honest with you, you really don't know until you get into a game. You don't. I was talking to CJ about it out there. He was at practice, and that first Minnesota game, what that was like and the ups and downs of that one. And a big part of it is getting your confidence. But I think you want to identify the things they do well and then really emphasize those, and then recognize what the areas that they need to be improved and try to make sure that we're addressing those and just try to get the guys better every day. And over time, it seems to always kind of shake itself out. But we're into day 3, and there was some good things out there today.
So I guess a logical follow-up there is, how much of a concern is that for Ryan Day, that he knows he's not really going to know what these guys are going to perform like in a live fire situation until they're doing it for real this fall?
Yeah, you never know. You try to do the best you can, and when you have somebody that's played a whole year, you certainly sleep a little bit better at night. When you have somebody who hasn't, then you don't. But but that's college football. And I think it's been exciting to develop young quarterbacks and new quarterbacks here the last couple of years. When you had Justin and even Dwayne, that was his first year playing, and then CJ 2 years ago. But the frustrating thing is you only get them for a couple of years, and then they move on to the NFL. But that's a good problem to have.
One of the other spots that the Buckeyes are looking for some more players to sort of step up this spring is in the interior of the defensive line. It feels like they're pretty comfortable with things at the top of the depth chart there at the interior of the defensive line. But what do they need to see out of some of the younger guys to really feel comfortable that they have enough depth there as well?
Yeah, you need them to flash. You need them to make plays. You need them to get off of blocks. Consistency over a whole spring. I think that's one of the things about playing in the D line that's probably talked about, not enough is, this sustaining a certain level of play for an extended period of time. Play 7, 8, 9 of a drive. Playing into the fourth quarter. And you want to see the ability of guys to make plays and flash, and that's great. But can you consistently put days back to back? Can you consistently put plays back to back over time? And that's what we need. We need to see that consistency.
When we talked to Jim Knowles during the first week of spring ball, he talked about how he was sort of shifting his focus from teaching to a little bit more competition now this year in year 2. So what does that look like during practice? How has that really played out during Ohio State's practices so far this spring?
Yeah, we're trying to find as many ways that we can to create winner or loser situations. We're starting practice right after stretch with winner or loser situations. As the pads are on, we're going to find as many ways as possible to do that. Because I think, we all work hard, and working hard gives us a chance. But the difference between that and competing is there's a winner and a loser every time you compete. So, year one on defense, installing it, trying to install the defense and get it taught, make sure you know what you're doing. And now it's more of an emphasis on how to do it, except for the younger guys. But for the older guys now, we have a bunch of experience coming back there, which is great. But how many times can we put them in competitive situations to go play? And that's what we're trying to do, whether it's at a position or as an offensive defense.
We mentioned off the top of the show that Pro Day is Wednesday. So that's a day when the Ohio State players who are looking to get drafted in the NFL draft have a chance to do kind of their own mini NFL combine in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. The scouts all come to Ohio State. The guys get to perform in a comfortable, familiar setting at the Woody Hayes. So what is Ryan Day's role on a day like that? Is he working with his players to kind of keep them loose and relaxed and ready to perform at their best? Is he talking to scouts to answer their questions? And how much does that day really matter in the grand scheme of things?
For us, the last couple of years, we've been able to have some of our younger guys participate to help out. So last year, for instance, CJ, threw to Chris and to Garrett. And so he actually got an opportunity to experience what that was like. We played some music to kind of do what you're talking about and kind of, kind of quiet, awkward tension in the room, just try to get rid of that, because the whole thing of it is just to play loose and have fun, and that's what we try to talk to our guys about. So in terms of our role, I think we just want to provide them whatever they need. It's their day to try to highlight what they do best, and with all the different people we come in, we meet with them. We'll have a meeting with everybody who's in attendance, and then a lot of one-off conversations and meetings. Yeah, we do that, and I talk to them, Mick talks to them, and we just answer any questions that they may have about our players. Most of them do such a great job. They know so much about our guys already. They have the combine interviews, but we're just here to advocate and provide information and make sure they have a great day so that they're putting their best foot forward.
CJ Stroud was back at the Woody on Tuesday as we were doing those interviews, and we saw him throwing a little bit on the field after we did those interviews. But then if he did a great job at the combine, as the consensus seemed to be, does he really need to throw again at Pro Day on Wednesday? Here was Day's answer on that.
It's a piece of the puzzle. I think every time you do something, it's a little piece. But, I think you watch what he did this season. You watch the way he played the Georgia game. You get a chance to see, at the combine, the way he throws the ball. But, I think most teams know what he can do. But it's another piece of the puzzle. And it's a great opportunity for teams to get out here and see him live and in color and see him throw it. It's good. I know as a quarterback, I always wanted to see what it looked like coming off the hand. And everybody got a chance to do that at the combine, and they'll get a chance to do that on Wednesday.
the Buckeyes have to be feeling pretty good about their starter at tight end. Cade Stover had a nice year last year, sort of established himself as tight end 1. But now they got to figure out who else is going to be able to play there. That is a crowded room. And so what do guys like Joe Royer or G. Scott have to be able to do to show that they can get on the field more? You're going to hear him talk about a little bit of football terminology. He'll explain the differences between the two tight end positions they have, the Y and the H. He'll cover that one. He's also going to throw out the terms 11 personnel and 12 personnel. This is something that you'll hear from time to time, and we'll try and explain it to you every once in a while, because I know not everyone has been listening to every single show since the start of the show. So 11 personnel, when he talks about that, that is 1 running back and 1 tight end, and thus 3 wide receivers. When he talks about 12 personnel, that's 1 running back, 2 tight ends, and thus 2 wide receivers. So really, for this conversation about tight ends, it's that second number, 1 tight end in 11 personnel and 2 tight ends in 12 personnel.
Yeah, well, they both have to be able to play in 11 personnel, which means they have to be able to go run routes and get open against safeties and nickels. But they also have to go in there and block 7 techniques in 11 personnel. In the 12 personnel, we have the Y and the H, and the Y does a little bit more of the heavy lifting. The H is sometimes a little bit more off the ball and does a little bit more off the ball type stuff. You saw Mitch do that a little bit last year. You saw Ruck do that the year before when we had Luke Farrell. So Cade's shown that he can do both, and we're looking for the rest of those tight ends to do is be able to show that. I think Keenan's off to a great start with that group, and hopefully we can keep growing on that and replace Mitch.
The quarterback is arguably one of, if not the most important single positions in any major American sport. So how do you evaluate those quarterbacks? Because there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just necessarily the guy who makes the best throws or the guy who's the best leader. There's a lot that goes into that. So what is Day really measuring outside of leadership when he's watching practice? What is he really measuring to evaluate those quarterbacks?
I've been talking to our guys about making the routine plays routinely. With our players and the skill that we have, we don't need an extraordinary stuff. We need people to take care of the football. We need them to, if the first read's there, take it. If not, work on to 2, 3, and then have a plan from there. Make good decisions on a run game, take care of the football, and lead the offense. If you're going to turn the ball over, it's not going to go well here. And so we've got to take care of the ball, but you also know we're going to be aggressive. And that's not just easy. It's a lot easier to say, well, take care of the football, but we also want to go score a bunch of touchdowns. So there's that balance that you have to find. And, some guys can find that easier than others. We've been fortunate enough to find the guys that get a feel for that. It's probably a big part of the it factor that people talk about, seeing the field and understanding situations. But the more game-like situations we can create, the more we get a feel for that, and certainly taking care of the football and making routine plays routinely is important.
They grade just about everything those quarterbacks do, and just about everyone does on that football team, at every practice, at every scrimmage, at every game. How do they evaluate them during a scrimmage versus during a practice versus during a game for a quarterback?
It's the way that the game is played. You have practice and preparation that leads up to a game, and then you have to go put it on the field. I think that it's kind of like that in the spring and the preseason, where you have your practices during the week, and you're making evaluations every day. But, one drill could be, team run and play action pass, and you're specifically working on that and you're getting better at that. But that's very focused on that specific situation. When you're playing in a game, it goes from first down to second down to third down. And if you're not staying on schedule on first and second down and finding that check down or being able to, create a play on third down, you just don't know that until you're in those type of situations. So it's one thing just to play one play. It's another thing to understand how that play is going to affect that drive and ultimately the game.
The quarterback has been a very, very big topic of conversation during all of these interviews this spring for obvious reasons. But other than the quarterback, what position group is Ryan Day maybe thinking about the most right now pre-practices into spring ball?
Probably offensive line, and then probably the secondary, just in general, just where that's at. I will say this again. I like the way the corners are playing. You'll see how the safeties did today, but depth in the D line. It's good to get a couple guys out there now that Tommy's not going to be practicing here this spring, to get some other guys going at linebacker. But those are the areas that we got to really do a great job with. You
obviously go into spring football hoping for the best, but maybe expecting the worst. when you're turning over as much of the offensive line as they are, knowing how important that offensive line is in terms of the offense just being able to function this fall, and then how explosive, how efficient can that offense be? A lot of that's going to be determined by that offensive line. So is there a risk of sort of falling into a trap and just sort of assuming everything's going to be going great and maybe being too optimistic about the offensive line, or, on the flip side, maybe being too pessimistic about the offensive line based on what you're seeing this early in the spring?
Well, you just have to evaluate for what it is. You have to identify, and you have to be real. You can't be fake in this game. The players know it, the coaches know it. So, sometimes you can feel like, we're riding a guy, or, we're really negative on someone who's a really good player, and, they can call that out. Or, if you're wrong in your evaluation and you think someone's better than they are, then, it's going to get you beat down the road. So you just got to do a great job of communicating and identifying what you think it is in the evaluation.
Ryan Day got to Ohio State back in 2017, and he has had a whole lot of different quarterbacks that he's gotten a chance to work with over that time. You may remember such quarterbacks as J.T. Barrett, Dwayne Haskins, Joe Burrow, Justin Fields, C.J. Stroud, Kyle McCord, and Devin Brown. So how has his view of the quarterback position changed since he got to Columbus? And with all of those guys that he's gotten a chance to work with, has what he views as maybe the necessary parts of the position or the necessary skills for that position, has that remained the same over those years? Probably.
I think the game is changing, but to your point, I don't think that what you look for in a quarterback really has. You have to be able to do stuff with your feet. You have to be able to create a little bit, in and out of the pocket. You have to at least be a threat in the run game. That has to be a part of what you do. I think it's important to do that. But you also have to be able to throw the football in the pocket on third down in the red zone. Be able to push the ball down the field and play action pass. So I think all those things are important on the field, and then the leadership part of it is critical. So no, I don't think that's changed. But I do think the more you look at the quarterbacks who are making it in the NFL and at the highest level of college football, they can move their feet. They can create. They can extend plays. Just thinking about the playoffs in college, thinking about the playoffs in the NFL. I mean, almost all those guys could do that. I think that's important. But I think we talked about that, probably 5, 10, 20 years ago. But I think more and more it's becoming part of the reality.
Day has had a variety of skill sets at quarterback since he's been there. Justin Fields was a better and more frequent runner than, say, Dwayne Haskins or C.J. Stroud. So how do you adjust the offense to your specific quarterback's skill set? Do you adjust what you're doing to what the quarterback does well, or are you looking for a specific skill set to fit the offense? How do you balance those two things?
Yeah, I think the first thing is they have to be able to compete. They have to be high competitors because of what it takes to be the quarterback at Ohio State. You have to be highly competitive. I think the other thing is you're looking for some sort of extraordinary trait. When you think about the different quarterbacks we've had, even just going back to, with Braxton and Cardell, JT, Dwayne, Justin, CJ, when Joe was here, I mean, they all had extraordinary traits. And I think that's important. And then you try to, emphasize those traits.
You heard Ryan Day talk about extraordinary traits and identifying extraordinary traits in his players. So with those two quarterbacks, Kyle McCord, Devin Brown, has he started to identify those extraordinary traits? And I will tell you here, he was later asked if he would like to share what those extraordinary traits were, and he said no. So has he at least gotten a chance to identify those extraordinary traits, even if he's not willing to talk about them yet?
No, I think that they're starting to take shape. Yeah, I think that they're doing a good job. I think the one thing that I can appreciate about both of them is their work ethic, their intelligence level. And it's been fun to get out there and see them now take the reps with the ones, because when you're taking reps with the 2s and the 3s, it's a little bit different, especially in season. But now they're getting thrust up there and pushed up there, and we'll see as we continue to go. We haven't even put third down in yet. We haven't put any of that stuff in, so we'll see. But so far, I kind of like their mentality, and I think that the team, believes in them, and I think that's important as well.
Day, of course, was a former college quarterback at New Hampshire back in the late 90s and early 2000s. So When he's evaluating a quarterback play or practice, how is he watching a play? How is he evaluating it from the quarterback standpoint? What is he watching to evaluate what their decision-making and execution was during any given play?
You're looking for timing. I think that's first thing. Is the timing right? And you're looking at their eyes. Where are they looking? I think that's very, very important. And then if their eyes and their feet are right, is the ball coming out where it's supposed to be on time? And when it goes exactly as planned, can we make the play? Okay, that's the first thing. Yes or no. If they can't make the play when everything goes exactly the way you design it, that's not good. If you draw the play up and it doesn't go exactly the way you plan, is there a plan B? Which is not throwing it there if it wasn't designed perfectly right, or maybe the coverage is a little bit different, where they can recognize, okay, this isn't exactly how we talked about it, or this is a dangerous situation. Now here comes plan B, because it's their job to make it right, and that's part of playing the quarterback position. And so the more times that you can make bad plays right, the better off you're going to be in this game. And I think you can see that at all levels. But you also have to make the routine plays routinely, and that's what we're working on right now.
We've talked about the fact that Ryan Day is maybe taking a little bit of a step back from the offense this year, giving Brian Hartline a little more responsibility in terms of play calling, and giving Day a little bit more time to look at the defense than he might have during a typical practice in previous years. So with a chance to watch a little more defense this spring, what has he noticed about the defense that maybe he didn't last year during Jim Knowles' first season with the Buckeyes?
Yeah, it's been fun to watch him work. It's been fun to see how, I could tell, he gets to a certain point where he wants to get enough reps of a defense over and over again against all the different formations, all the different looks. And then when it gets to a certain point, then he feels comfortable. Okay, this thing's going to get game ready. I can call this in a game. But if it hasn't had as many reps, it's not ready yet. It kind of stays over here. And so it's my job as a head coach to make sure we have enough plays where he's getting what he needs to make sure the guys understand that enough, see the different, ways that our offenses are going to attack them so that it can be game ready.
On yesterday's show, we talked about the 2024 Big Ten schedule and the 3 possible scheduling models that the Big Ten was considering for that. If you want to hear more about that, you can hear Tony Girdham and I talk about that on the Tuesday morning episode of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning. But Ryan Day was asked about the coaches' meetings, the coaches' conversations about the future of Big Ten scheduling. Here's what he said to say about that.
Good conversation about exactly what you're saying. As we go into 24, things are changing. And what does that mean for the conference in terms of the scheduling? There's still a lot to be decided there. But as we go into, going away from divisions and all those types of conversations, there's a lot to be worked out. Certainly with the playoffs and the conference games. And so a lot of back and forth. I thought it was great. We talked about some rule changes and those type of things. So, I think we have our regular meetings, our regular meeting on Zoom, I think maybe next week planned. And so we'll continue that cadence of working with the conference. But I'll say this about the Big Ten coaches, a lot of respect for the guys that are in that room, a lot of experience, really good football coaches. And so even just to be in there and listen to others talk, was really good.
All right, we went a little longer than normal there, but I thought there was a lot of good information there on a whole bunch of different topics. And we're going to be talking a whole bunch more about Pro Day a little later on today. We'll be at the Woody covering all of that. That will start late morning. We'll have coverage from inside the Woody Hayes of all those Buckeyes trying to earn a spot on an NFL team, as well as some of the younger guys getting a chance to show off what they can do as well. So we'll have all sorts of coverage there at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. It'll be this morning, this afternoon. We'll try and get you some live coverage at some point, depending on what the video situation is there. Sometimes there are restrictions on stuff. So we'll try and get you some kind of coverage throughout the day so we can sort of let you see what we're seeing. And of course, we'll have much more coverage of Pro Day tomorrow afternoon and evening. And then, of course, we'll be back on Thursday with more interviews from the Woody Hayes. We'll get to talk to the offensive linemen and defensive linemen after practice number 4 of the spring on Thursday. And then Saturday, we're back at the Woody once again for that first scrimmage of the spring. It should be a very busy week and a fantastic week at BuckeyeHuddle.com. You might want to consider becoming a member there, getting access to our fantastic team of insiders, Kevin and Tony and I covering the team. You've got Alex and Mark covering the recruiting. You got Ross and Michael and Justin and all the great guys covering the scheme stuff. It's all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. It is a one-stop shop for everything you need to know about Ohio State football and much more. So sign up today at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.